Brazil, the banks of the Rio Madeira. This river runs heavy with gold. The men here are known as garimpeiros, the gold seekers. Knee-deep in mud, they are dreaming a great dream, the dream of untold riches. But the gold will exact a terrible price. In their obsession to carve a treasure out of the mud, the men are driven to sacrifice anything, their lives, their health, the rainforest itself. They are hard men in a hard land. And here in this tropical hell they have made is the gold rush of our time. Today's Wild West, a glade in the jungle, some huts, a few hens. Here in this tiny village, life is stripped down to the simplest things. And in the middle, Hans Hofmann. A well-to-do farmer's son from Austria, Hofmann gave up his comfortable life to travel halfway around the world. The spirit of adventure took him to Brazil. When he heard about the legendary gold deposits along the Rio Madeira, it was only a matter of time until he joined the garimpeiros. He left behind the security of his home in Austria to join the world of the fortune hunters. But it was a rough world he had entered.
Many people die here. All the aggressive ones, for example, only have a short life. They meet others who are even more aggressive. Since I've been here, 9 people I knew personally have been killed.
4 years have passed since Hans first arrived at the harbor of Porto Velho. For him, as for all gold seekers, this town is the gateway to the promised land, the last outpost of civilization on the edge of gold country. Many come here pursuing the lure of South American gold. But Brazil's prospecting areas are actually 100 miles beyond this small town, a world away in the wilderness. And so, many a dream of gold ends soon after arrival. For not everyone is prepared to make that trip from Porto Velho to the Rio Madeira, to endure the hardships of the prospector's world. For them, Porto Velho is the end of the line. Those who stay have become the other half of the gold culture, the merchant half, the ones who run the small stores and bars which outfit the prospectors of the Rio Madeira with their supplies. The river has brought good fortune to some of them. They wear their success around their necks. But most gave up the dream a long time ago. Only a few, like Hans Hofmann, are prepared to leave everything behind, to head down the lonely dirt road into the adventure and the gamble of a lifetime. "100 miles from Porto Velho is a world beyond civilization. A world which functions according to its own law, quite literally, the law of the jungle. Here, anyone in need of grazing land simply burns down the trees. Anyone seeking new prospecting sites moves on, leaving their scrap metal behind. There are no policemen here, no regulations. In its own way, it is as free as any place on earth, and as harsh. This is the Rio Madeira, home to Hans Hofmann and the garimpeiros. Here, strange boats float on the waters, bizarre constructions welded out of steel and tin. They are the dragas, floating bases of operations of the gold seekers. The draga is workplace, tool, and home. It is the prospector's most valuable possession. Hoffmann's draga is the largest on the river, which puts him right at the top of the Garimperos' pecking order. But in the jealous world of the Rio Madeira, the Garimperos are always looking to pick off the top man. Early in his days on the river, Hans almost lost his life defending his drilling site.
The guy didn't hesitate. He got a gun and said, "You're dead, I'll shoot you." And he really did shoot. I heard it whistle past my ear. Shot, a bullet.
That time, Hans was lucky. The shot missed. But Hans's success here is not just luck. He has a feeling for the moods of the Rio Madeira, a kind of intuition. His latest hunch is to take on a partner, the Japanese Jaime Kanaelo. Kanaelo is like an old fox with a nose for the rich gold seams of the river, and he likes working for Hans. The Austrian has a reputation for fairness. Day by day on the Rio Madeira, gold prospecting isn't romantic. It's a matter of makeshift mechanics, of suction valves and drill shafts. Above all, you need to be able to cope with repairs out in the middle of nowhere. For the river is hard on machines and on men. And many more fail here than ever strike it rich. The wrecks of the dragas testify to the shattered dreams of their former owners. Some were gold kings for one night only. Some died with a bullet through the head. But most never really drilled the truly lucrative sites down in the depths of the river. This is Hans's plan. With a new drill shaft, nearly 200 feet long, he can now reach depths inaccessible to others. He believes that this time he will strike it rich.
Our test drillings, which we have been taking over a period of 24 hours, indicate close to 1,800 ounces of gold reserves in the riverbed.
Over the next 2 weeks, Hans's men will work with great concentration. This may be their big chance to raise kilos of gold. The engines run round the clock, day and night. At midnight, an alarm siren shatters the darkness. The men gather rapidly on deck. An alarm can signal all kinds of disaster. If the anchor rope breaks, the draga can be swept over nearby waterfalls and smashed on the rocks below. This time, the problem is less dangerous, but annoying all the same. A piece of driftwood sucked into the pump has jammed the machinery. There is so much wood floating on the Rio Madeira, it frequently stops the engines. As the men work, they are hounded by mosquitoes. At moments like this, they curse the jungle. Still, when the machines are working again, troubles are forgotten. The drill does seem to have uncovered a rich gold seam. With every passing hour, Hans and the men check the murky water that flows through their equipment. The drill head is currently at a depth of 100 feet, already deeper than most of Hans's competitors can reach. The Austrian feels sure that things are looking up.
Auf wie viel Meter Tiefe bist du denn jetzt? 35 Meter. Aber senkrecht.
Spirits rise on board. Soon enough, they feel, the gold will be within their grasp. As the night shift continues, the day workers take a break at one of the modest pleasure palaces along the river, where the spirit of the Wild West still reigns.
You don't need an ID here. There are no laws here. So there are a lot of lawless people here who are very dangerous.
Die was so relativ gefährlich sind, ja. Aber ich selber bin nicht bewaffnet, weil ich denke...
I don't carry a gun myself because I think I live more dangerously when I'm armed than when I'm not.
In this man's world, most of the women are prostitutes. Often the prospectors will spend hundreds of dollars earned over the weeks just for a few moments of pleasure. But tonight, business isn't good. For when there's a soccer match, the garimperos forget everything else. Sex, money, loneliness, malaria. All the dangers and the hardships of their lives are forgotten while the ball rolls. Forgotten until they leave the bar and return to the dragas. While others are living it up, Hans is gathering his strength. He will need it over the coming days. Unseen by the men, a snake has slithered onto the draga. The river is infested with venomous creatures. Hans doesn't know how poisonous this one is. But quietly, efficiently, he takes care of it. Don't let anything disturb the working morale. That's the motto of river veterans like Hans and Jaime. But the day is not to be a lucky one for the draga. Drifting towards the shore, it has run up onto a sandbank. For the garimperos, the struggle against the river never ends. Man and nature, churning up silt and stones, are constantly reshaping the riverbed, always creating new hazards for the dragas. Jaime and Hans will have to do more than push. Hans is depending on the old-timer. Nobody knows the river as well as he does. No real work can be done until he finds a way out of this muddy trap. Hans is worried. Every hour of lost time means money down the drain. And if the draga is damaged or lost, his life as a prospector will be through. Luckily, Canaelo hasn't lost his famous instincts.
They have pushed the draga out of the bank zone. As soon as the water rises again, the draga will move itself. After all, it does weigh 60 tons. Now we'll go back. We've got everything under control. No problem. Let's get back to work.
Financing a single day on the Rio Madeira cost Hoffman 60 grams of gold, nearly $1,200 a day. This incident has cost valuable working time, and Hans will have to make up his losses. His first impulse, to check the carpets, the filters that catch the gold.
We are now washing out the top carpets. Only 5% of the gold is settled in the lower carpets. This means that 95% of the gold is in the top carpets.
But getting that gold out of the carpets isn't easy. It's a brutally repetitive task, slogging the carpets through the water to see what they will yield. And then it's time to test the water. At the bottom of the bowl, a yellow shimmer. This is the fruit of all their labors. Gold. Not huge nuggets, but a fine layer of dust. This is the way the garimperos recover their riches, speck by speck. It is exhausting, back-breaking labor. Still, no one here pauses to question his fate. They'd rather check the river mud again to see if it's been a good day. The thick yellow-brown sludge may contain any percentage of gold. Quicksilver will be added to draw it out. But here, the curse of the mining begins, for the quicksilver is lethal. With every gram of gold it extracts, it poisons the waters of the Rio Madeira. There are no pollution regulations here.
The government has established a zone of 90 miles, which is described as the gold prospecting zone. That means anyone who feels like it, anyone, foreigners too, can set himself up here and mine gold tax-free. But right behind Porto Velho, there's a nature reservation. And it's true that the dragas get thrown out of this area because they pollute everything. The 90 miles here are completely polluted.
Not so long ago, Hans decided to do something about the pollution. He invented a device to recycle the quicksilver, to filter it out of the water that goes back into the river. The gold in Hans's bowl does not glitter at nature's expense. Still, few other garimperos are so concerned. And in a way, even Hans isn't worried.
The river is completely polluted, but a lot of water flows through the river, and the pollution settles down below in the silt, not up in the water. I drink the water myself.
One last check before the water is returned to the river. No gold, no quicksilver. A clean job. To retrieve the gold, Hans has also developed a cleaner method of melting. Copper plates prevent the quicksilver from escaping into the air. It flows through a groove into a container. And at the end of a long day's work, this little patty, worth $1,000. It hasn't been a good day on the Rio Madeira, but at least Hans will be able to pay his men. If they didn't get their fair wages in gold, there's no telling what might happen on board. But compared to some on the dragas nearby, Hans's men have it easy. These makeshift operations have no drills, no filters. They send down divers to scrape the gold off the riverbeds with primitive suction pipes. Even the zippers don't work. At every moment, these divers are at risk, for they have no special equipment. Only a thin plastic tube supplies them with oxygen. Working 2 to 3 hours at a depth of 100 feet, these are the lowest of the low in the hierarchy of the garimperos. For if their thin air tube gets twisted or caught, if they panic and surface too quickly, then the search for gold will end in death. There were times when almost every day here saw casualties among the inexperienced divers. If life is cheap here along the Rio Madeira, it is one of the few things that is. draga must be constantly restocked with gas and diesel fuel, and food for the garimperos. Hans will spend most of his money just to keep his operation running. A floating supermarket provides him with the essentials and more. After all, 8 hard-working prospectors can consume a lot of food. Sometimes it seems he spends all of his spare time shopping. Returning to the boat with some of his men, Hans is bringing a precious cargo, diesel cans. The machinery consumes vast quantities of fuel. The generators on the draga run round the clock. As for the rest of Hans's men, they take their gold into Puerto Velho to change it into cash. The gold trade is flourishing here in Puerto Velho. It's only 100 miles from the long hours and the perils of the Rio Madeira, but it seems another world. Here, they're only interested in the end product, the gold. Still, there is danger here too, for when the foundryman separates the quicksilver from the gold, neither he nor his client are protected against the poisonous fumes. The garimperos die, if not with a bullet through the head, then of cancer of the lungs or kidneys. All for this tiny lump of gold, 15 ounces, worth about $6,000. Hans believes his site will eventually yield him 1,800 ounces, more than 100 of these ingots, $1 million in gold. Would that be enough to leave the Rio Madeira? Would he leave the gold trade?
No, not for 1,800 ounces. It would be different if we found an even better site, but 1,800 ounces isn't enough. I don't think I'd move camp just for 1,800 ounces. But if I really do find a heap of gold somewhere else, then I'll leave everything and go back.
The lure of gold is hard to get out of the blood. Seasons change on the Rio Madeira, but the addiction remains the same. Along the banks of the river, storms are coming, heavy rains that sweep across the Amazon. For most of the dragas, the rainy season is a dead time. The water rises too high, and the drill shafts can no longer reach the riverbed. But for Hans, the higher water level simply means fewer competitors. Day after day on the Rio Madeira, the work goes on, as it has for years now. All that changes here is the landscape. Over the decades, it has become littered with the steel carcasses of abandoned hopes. Even the rocks are mere shells, carved out by the garimperos' drills. What remains is a strange lunar landscape. And yet, as nature is diminished, as people die or are driven away, only one thing does not disappear: the gold fever.
The river will still contain gold even in 50 or 100 years' time. There will still be places to try your luck.
This is the garimperos' dream, the great hacienda of one of the river's gold kings. A large farm with huge herds of cattle, perhaps the ultimate status symbol in Brazil. But the irony is, Hans already has all this in Austria. Back home, his mother is waiting for him to take over the family farm.
Yes, she does want me to come back, and I really do think that I will return one day.
But for now, he is still enthralled to the gold fever, for it is the greatest game of chance in the world. The days may be long, but any one could finally bring that one pile of gold. Until then, Hans won't curse the Rio Madeira. He'll just go out day by day and try his luck again. Brazil, the banks of the Rio Madeira. This river runs heavy with gold. The men here are known as garimpeiros, the gold seekers. Knee-deep in mud, they are dreaming a great dream, the dream of untold riches. But the gold will exact a terrible price. Today's Wild West, a glade in the jungle, some huts, a few hens. Here in this tiny village, life is stripped down to the simplest things. And in the middle, Hans Hofmann. A well-to-do farmer's son from Austria, Hofmann gave up his comfortable life to travel half. In their obsession to carve a treasure out of the mud, the men are driven to sacrifice anything: their lives, their health, the rainforest itself. They are hard men in a hard land. And here, in this tropical hell they have made, is the gold rush of our time.
People only have a short life. They meet others who are even more aggressive. Since I've been here, 9 people I knew personally have been killed.
4 years have passed since Hans first arrived at the harbor of Porto Velho. For him, as for all gold seekers, this town is the gateway to the promised land, the last outpost of civilization on the edge of gold country. Many come here pursuing the lure of South America way around the world. The spirit of adventure took him to Brazil. When he heard about the legendary gold deposits along the Rio Madeira, it was only a matter of time until he joined the garimpeiros. He left behind the security of his home in Austria to join the world of the fortune hunters. But it was a rough world he had entered.
Many people die here. All the aggressive ones, for example.